Let's say there's a competition where you could win £1,000 and you just had to guess the 2 horses you're going to put up. I guarantee you there's someone behind that camera that would have put those 2 up.
No, surely not.
Hello and welcome along to the Let's Talk Racing YouTube channel in association with Racing TV. You're watching episode 2 of our Horses to Follow series for the 2023 to 2024 season. Andrew, how you doing?
Yeah, very good, Josh. Very good that the 2 of us have returned from illness, unfortunately, last week.
It was a bad illness.
It was a bad illness, but unfortunately, we picked the right time of the season. It's like getting an injury as a jockey, as a jumps jockey in maybe May or something like that. You're not missing a whole pile at this time of the season, but we're back, we're fresh, and it won't happen again. There'll be no more illnesses on my watch for the rest of this season.
It was a delayed episode 2, but we do hope you have stuck around and you do enjoy this one as much as you did the first. Thank you so much for all your comments, welcoming us back, all the likes and the new subscribers. I think we have over 200 new subscribers since the last video, so thank you very much for subscribing. We do hope you stick around for the full season, and if you enjoy this video, please hit that like button, get your comments down below, and do subscribe to the channel. It massively helps us out, and we welcome all of it. It means that we can grow and hopefully get bigger and better guests on the podcast. We're dreaming of the William Mullins, the Gordon Elliots, and the Paul Nicholls of the world. Hopefully we can make that happen. So let's explain the situation so far. We've both put up 3 horses to follow to date, 2 on the main channel and 1 on LTR Ultra. My 3 were Il Atlantique, Giovinco of Lucinda Russell's, and Let's Go Champ of Henry de Bromhead and Roger Brookhouse. As your 3 were?
Mine was Kimbara for John McConnell, who has already gone and run since we made the video.
And he won.
And he did win. Now, he was entitled to win, but good to see Horses to Follow 1, winners 1. I also put up 10 lengths Tom for Tom Lacey, and my horse for LTR Ultra was out at Kim Bailey's yard, horse called the Kemble Brewery, bumper winner last year.
If you do want to get those LTR Ultra horses with the explanation behind them and a week in advance, you can do so by subscribing to LTR Ultra. Click on our channel on a desktop, a laptop, a computer, and do press join by our name, and you can see all the details about that there. We do hope you enjoy my first horse to follow. My 4th horse to follow is... My 4th horse to follow for the upcoming season is a horse trained by Alan King. I know, not really my thing, but I was really impressed with a horse who didn't win a race last season, and that is a horse called Masachio. So a couple of years ago, Masachio did win a Doncaster bumper, but because that was at Doncaster, it's not shown on Racing TV, we can't show it for you here. So on his next start, he ran at Ayr in another bumper. He was towards rear for the majority of the run, and I just think he was given a little bit too much to do. As you can see here, staying on stoutly to the line and beaten half a length by Vina Ardanza, who is now rated 138, and he was also giving him £4 as well. Again, given too much to do. You can definitely forgive that with a horse who the connections are just getting to know. He then sustained an injury, and we didn't see him for another 662 days. That's when he went to Warwick, held up yet again, and yet again staying on in very, very soft conditions. Beaten only 2 lengths by Bowens Park and Katate Dory, who did go and win on his next start. Again, for a horse who'd had such a long layoff and plenty of inexperience, I think you can mark up that performance. That was very good for me. Masachio then faced Bowens Park again on his next start in a bumper I'm in love with. This time, Masachio did get the better of Bowens Park, who was back in 4th, but did bump in to, I think, a good one in As Luck Goes, trained by Ben Brookhouse. So why do I love this bumper so much? Well, it's the one bumper I keep such a close eye on outside of the spring festivals. The list of horses that won this race is pretty ridiculous. In 2015, Barter's Hill won the race. Bouvidaire was 2nd and Altior was 3rd. In 2016, Ballyandy won the race. He obviously went on to win the champion bumper that year. In 2020, Ocean Wind won the race. He's a horse that was rated over 110 on the flat. In 2021, Good Risk at All won the race. He beat I Like to Move It, and Gelino Bello was 3rd. So many graded winners in that race. Year on year, this race produces really good horses, and I'm hoping that's the case this year with Masachio. So on his next and final start of the season, he went to Aintree in the Grade 2 bumper, and I think he deserved his place there despite not winning earlier that season. As you can see here, he lined up at the back on the outside, and unless you're on something out of the ordinary, I just personally think you're going to struggle to win from there. The eventual winner, Florida Dreams, and the eventual second, Blizzard of Oz, they're hacking along nicely, 2 or 3 off the rail and fairly prominent. As they go in front of the stands for the first time, Adrian Heskin then decides the outside isn't the place to be, bringing Masachio all the way into the far inside, which means fast forward a mile as they're turning for home, Masachio is on the rail, but virtually the back marker with a wall of 16 horses in front of him. It was always going to be very difficult from there. At the top of the straight, Adrian Heskin is struggling for room. Adrian brings him out wide, a barging match with Kimbara, and then decides to try and find a gap up the inside, met with trouble again, and then goes back outside and still stays on a very creditable 7th. Plenty of eye-catching material there, and I think you can just mark up almost every single one of those runs. I know he's a nearly horse, I know he's not done it, and that might put a few of you off, but I honestly would be really disappointed, A, if he doesn't go and win his novice hurdle very impressively or maiden hurdle, and B, if he's not contesting graded novice hurdles this season. I think he definitely has the ability to do that, and he's shown that so far. I'd also be really interested to see how Tom Cannon gets on with him, as Adrian Heskin will no longer be riding as many of the McNeil family horses, and to get the best steer on Masachio for the upcoming season. I sat down very luckily with Ella McNeil, and she told me a little bit more about him. Is it fair to say everything just went wrong at Aintree?
Yeah, I think he just, typical of the Aintree bumper, it's carnage, isn't it? Yeah. There's so many runners and they're all babies and inexperienced, and he just got stuck in traffic. And I think I've watched it back a few times now, and the way he runs on at the end I think was so encouraging. And yeah, I think all is to play for, I guess, going into his novice hurdling season.
He's one of those horses that, although he won the bumper at Donny, you always felt, watching all of his runs after that when he failed to win, that he's a much better horse than what he's shown there.
Yeah.
Aintree, I feel like he had a clear run and maybe was kept slightly towards the inside in the early stage of the race, that he would have finished closer. Next year, hurdling guaranteed.
Yeah.
Would you say he's a 2 mile, a 2.5 mile, a 3 mile? It's difficult to know, but he looks like he's got plenty of stamina when he's staying on. Yeah,
I think you'll obviously start him on the lesser distance and work up in trip and time. But it's probably worth noting that he had almost 2 years off the track with a kind of growing pain, injury, stress fracture sort of thing. And I think he's just, that's him. He's taken a while to come to hand, and he'll improve year on year, and he'll probably be one of those horses that's best age 7, 8, 9. So yeah, we obviously start 2 mile novice hurdling and go from there and see how he fares.
Obviously Adrian rode him last year, that won't be the case this year. Are we expecting, is it going to be like stable jockeys, is it going to be Cannon riding and maybe Harry Cobden riding the Paul Nicholls horses?
Yeah, so probably, majority of the time will be stable jockeys, but we'll still use Adrian here and there. I think he's actually going over to Ireland now, which is exciting for him to start a new lease of life over there. Nice, but whenever we can, probably in Ireland we'll use Adrian, and stable jocks over here for the with the trainers.
So I got the impression there from Ella McNeil that she was keen, but maybe not completely sold, and they might have nicer prospects down the line this season.
Yeah, well, I think that's fair enough. They've obviously spent a fair whack of money recently on certain horses, and Masachio probably is one of those horses that brings a bit of form to the table, but it always seems the case with national hunts, sales and stuff like that. You're almost always dreaming of the next one rather than perhaps you might have something a little bit better than you think on your hands. And I do think that Masachio is a very nice horse.
I do. Good form. Has been unlucky not to win last season. I actually think that he could be pretty smart.
Yeah,
I think he's one of Alan King's better novice hurdlers or more exciting bumper winners. He did win a bumper. He did win a bumper at Doncaster. He's going hurdling. I think he's one of his more exciting ones in recent years. What's your fourth horse to follow?
Well, let's find out. So my fourth horse to follow for this season comes from the Barry Connell yard, and obviously he had such a great season last year, having Grade 1 victories with Marine National and Goodland, capped off with Marine National winning that Supreme Novices Hurdle, and gave, I suppose, myself and everyone else that had followed the horse throughout the season a really great day. And obviously Barry and Mikey to have such a fantastic day on the big stage was great to see. But you're not looking for those types of horses on this type of video. You're looking for something maybe a little bit outside the box. And as a result, I've gone for a horse that may be going novice chasing this year. And he has obviously good land and marine to go novice chasing, but this horse will do as well. And it's a horse called My Immortal, who actually is a pretty slow progressing 7-year-old who's been a little bit fragile up in his career to date, but I just have a feeling that fences will be made for him. He's a big horse, he's a decent enough jumper, and I feel that once he gets into that rhythm, and if he can stay sound, and if he can get into a good kind of training module this year, he could end up developing into a much better chaser than what we've seen over hurdles so far. He was a point-to-point buy. He then disappointed in a couple of bumpers before winning a maiden hurdle over 3 miles, but he first came on my radar when he won a 3-mile handicap hurdle at Punchestown back in February 2022 under Sean Flanagan. This was before Mikey OSullivan would have joined Barry Connell's yard, and he was really good this day, I thought, even though he jumped pretty sloppy. He was down in the weights. It was a winnable opportunity. When you can see how good the horse was after that, it was clearly a little bit of a blot from the handicapper this day round. But he jumped poor enough, but still coming down to the last, he quickened up into the last like a really nice horse. He stays very well, and despite making an awful blunder at the final hurdle, which really checked all momentum and allowed horses to come up next side him, he still managed to quicken away and end up winning by 4.5 lengths. Unfortunately, as he is a fragile horse, we didn't see him again that season, and it took until around October time in 2022 to see him again this year, or last season, should I say, where he was down the field in a 2.5 mile handicap hurdle. But the second piece of footage we're going to see is him lining up in a Pertemps qualifier in November 2022, which was the last time we saw the horse, and he ended up getting beaten just a neck by She Wears It Well, who was a grade 3 winner on her next start and ended up running in the mare's hurdle. It was down the field that day, but it was quite a good graded mare in her own right. My Immortal, I thought, was electric this day. The cheek pieces went on for the first time, which was interesting because I thought they really sharpened up his jumping, which left a little bit to be desired in his previous runs over hurdles. But he was really sharp, and Mikey, I think, was in the ideal spot for the entire way of the race. He was jumping well, he was up in the van off not a massively hard pace to go at, and at the same time, he just seemed to have the race exactly where he would have wanted to have been. He kicked for home, turning in. He took a few lengths out of the field. If you'd watched the full race, you would have seen She Wears It Well had gone from being prominent to out the back of the telly, but she ends up coming down to the last, jumps it well, and ends up just nailing My Immortal. My Immortal was the winner of the race for everywhere bar the post. It was one of those really, really agonising ones. I remember myself and my dad were in the stands watching it, cheering him on. Barry Connell was around 3 rows back going mad. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be that year, or that day, should I say. This year, I'm hoping, will be the year, though, as he has been put away. He was entered in a few beginners' chases at the back end of last season. They didn't take up those engagements. He doesn't want good ground. He does need a cut in it. And I think this year, when we see him out in October, November, which is when they're likely to going to go for a beginner's chase, it wouldn't surprise me at all if this horse could really progress on the rating of 134 he has over hurdles. I'd be disappointed personally if he's not at minimum a stone better than that over fences if he manages to take to the sport, which I know for no reason he shouldn't. However, with that being in mind, I decided that we'd get on to Mikey OSullivan himself and see what he has to think. And we also pressed him on the great matter of Marine Nationale. So can you tell us a little bit about what the horse is like and I suppose the makeup of him? He has had a few big absences to overcome.
Yeah, look, he's a grand horse. He's never had any serious injuries, but he just he's tricky to train. You can't be too hard on him, but he's definitely one I'd be looking forward to jumping the fence on now. He won his point-to-point for Cormac Doyle. He's a brilliant jumper, very straightforward. He was very unlucky in Punchestown in the spring there. He was just touched off in the Pertemps qualifier by She Wears It Well. She went on to be a grade 2 mare, I think. So yeah, he has plenty of credentials. I'd be hoping there if we get a clear run at him, he'll make it into a nice novice chaser for the season ahead.
And looking at that last run at Punchestown, I'm sure you were devastated because it seemed like it all went well. The cheek pieces were on, as you say, he jumped superbly, and just to get nutted on the line by quite a quality mare, as you said.
Yeah, exactly. It was a horrible feeling. I just got done on the line, but looking back on it after, there's not too much I would have done differently or the race went smoothly. I got the gaps, he jumped and he travelled, and it was the perfect race really. We just got nailed on the line by a quality mare and a very good ride by Paul Townend. So yeah, it was sickening at the time, but I suppose looking back on it, it was a very, very good run, and you'd be hoping that he'll improve again for a fence. He seems to have loads of scope. He probably jumps hurdles too big, and he's a kind of a 3 mile chaser in the making. Yeah.
And for a horse that made his kind of debut under rules quite a while ago, he's still only 7 going on 8. As you say, he's now going to go chasing. I suppose it's very hard to say at this time of the season, but what sort of targets and what sort of way do you feel he could be campaigned?
Yeah, well, I suppose he hasn't a lot of miles on the clock, so you'd be hoping he'd pick up beginners with him. I suppose the horses are just starting to come back in now. It's exciting times. The last couple of weeks, they're all coming back in, and dreams and high aspirations for them all. I suppose they all can't go that way. If 50% of them went the right way, it'd be a good season, But he looks well. He'll probably be saddle on his back now this week. And imagine Barry'll have a plan from then. I'd say, there'll be no major plans with him. He'll probably go hopefully for beginners there, and when the ground gets a bit softer in October, November time, and take it from there.
And would you say he's very ground dependent in terms of what he needs?
I'd say he definitely prefers softer ground. He's probably better for it. I wouldn't go run him on proper good ground or anything like that. He's a grand big horse, and he hits the ground hard. So no, he's a winter chaser, and I wouldn't be chancing him on anything too for him.
So races, even looking at kind of some of the big novice handicaps come the end of the season at the Naces and Navins of the world, you see that potentially might suit him. He seems to stay all day.
Yeah, exactly, and he's a bit of experience under his belt, and as I said, he's very straightforward. So I'd imagine he'd have no problem jumping a fence, and he's straightforward, and we'll go from there. Hopefully, we get a clear run at him. He's a horse now I'd be looking forward to. He might make into one of the top novice chasers in the yard. Hopefully, he could get to a grade 3 level or something like that if we got a clear run at him.
And talking about Marine Nationale, obviously Barry Connell came out a couple of weeks ago on Racing TV and said that it looks likely he's going to go chasing. I suppose you must be buzzing to get your leg back over him, whether it's over hurdles or fences.
Yeah, exactly. Look, there's nothing definite yet. I suppose Barry will be thinking about it there. There's no rush to make a decision, but yeah, looking forward to him. Obviously, he'll have no problem jumping a fence. Sam Curling had him, and he's jumped plenty of fences there as a 3 and a 4-year-old. So either way, I'm looking forward to him. Look, I'd love to take on and go for a champion hurdle. Obviously, it's one of the best races that as a jockey, a national hunt jockey, you want to win, right? And so that or the Arkle Olympic I'm playing, and I'm just very lucky to be on his back. Hopefully, we get there all in one piece. And look, if the season goes as well as it did last year, it'll be unbelievable. He's one of them French red horses. He's obviously proved he's very, very good, but to prove he's better than that again, he's to go on and do it for a second season, and hopefully he can.
I know you mentioned as well after you won the Supreme, like his jumping is very good, but he had the tendency to slightly linger at 1 or 2. Do you feel even if he stayed hurdling that he actually has scope to get that little bit quicker and more fluent?
Yeah, 100%. He'll definitely get quicker and very slick. In fairness to him, he didn't put a foot wrong in the Supreme. I don't think he touched a twig the whole way around. Even to watch him at the last, he just popped it and cleared it without putting a foot wrong. So he's a very, very clever, intelligent horse. And his jumping was very good that day. But it was only his third run over hurdles, and probably we wouldn't do any schooling with him at home really, just to get the eye in. But he hadn't seen a hurdle really since the Royal Band, so for him to jump as well as he did was exceptional. And obviously, yeah, he's going to get, if he goes hurdling again, he'll get quicker and slicker. And look, he'll have to. It's going to be a big step up if he does go that way. We'll wait and see. But look, hopefully, he stays sound and I stay sound. And if we had a good year last year, it'd be unbelievable.
How good is it to get Big Stones on the podcast? Just tremendous. What a man. Thank you very much, Mikey, for coming on. And we hopefully might get him a couple of times this season. But let's talk about my Immortal, Barry Connell.
Yeah, I think he's got a very nice profile. He's a fragile horse, but I got the impression from Mikey, which was a good thing, there wasn't anything serious going wrong, just little niggly things. I think that's just because he's a relatively big horse, and it's just taken him a little bit of time to actually grow into himself. Mikey didn't put me away in any respect in terms of, you know, what he wanted and what he thought of the horse going forward. And obviously good to get a little bit of a talk about Marine National as well.
What did you think of that?
Yeah, I think they're just sitting on the fence a little bit. I think they're being a bit coy. And
They're just waiting for Constitution Hill.
I would say so, yes, because I know Barry's been going on every programme at the moment and saying that he's going chasing. But if Nicky Anderson came out next week and said, we're 100% going novice chasing, would you not go champion hurdle route?
He
and
would
Mikey
retreat quicker than he could even think about it.
Very much so. And I got the impression from Mikey, he was actually... the prospect of potentially going down the champion hurdle route was slightly more exciting in his mind, but obviously very interesting to hear his thoughts. And a little bit of a bonus for those that do subscribe to LTR Ultra was that I managed to sit down with Mikey actually for a little bit longer than you saw there, and he got a very good bulletin, a very interesting bulletin about Goodland, and we also have Mikey OSullivan's very own horse to follow. So if you want to see that, do subscribe to LTR Ultra.
My fifth horse to follow for the upcoming National Hunt season is a horse trained by Henry de Bromhead, owned by Rob Corr, and I think could be contesting graded novice hurdles this upcoming season. It's a horse called Slade Steel. He won his point-to-point in May 2022, but we didn't see him until he contested a hot bumper at Punchestown in December 2022. He was dropped out here with Blizzard of Oz sitting mid-division, obviously spoke about him earlier, was wider than Blizzard of Oz for the majority of the race, moved into the race really stylishly and picked up when asked. On debut, against horses with more experience, I was really taken. The second, Captain Cody, won on his next start and finished 6th in the champion bumper, so only 6 lengths behind A Dream to Share, beating Blizzard of Oz and Captain Cody, who have gone on to frank the form none ends. On debut, I thought was a really good performance, and I know Connections were very excited about his next start then at the Punchestown Festival. This is the last time we saw him, and he came up against 5 former bumper winners and the highly touted Ballyburn of Willie Mullins. People think this horse is going to go right to the top. I definitely do. Dropped out again. I've highlighted Ballyburn here in red and Slade Steel out the back. As the pace quickened, he was widest of the field, with Ballyburn only having chosen witness on his inside. It was position A, exactly where you would have wanted to be. And turning for home, Slade Steel was widest of them all. He did knuckle down, he did quicken, he did battle on, but he just couldn't go with Ballyburn, who had been in position A for the entirety of the race. And in my opinion, I think Ballyburn is possibly the most exciting bumper winner last year going novice hurdling. He's the one I'm most excited about. So they're 2 really top runs, beating good horses on debut and then finishing a good third behind a really smart prospect of Willie Mullins. That's not a bad thing to do at all. I think Slade Steel with more experience can notch up a couple of wins, early wins this season, and then go and contest those graded races, maybe grade 1 novice hurdles. I think with regards to Il Atlantique, from the first episode, I think Slade Steel might be slightly more forward, and he might be one that could go and win a grade 1 novice hurdle this season. He could go and definitely contest in them. Maybe Il Atlantique is one for further down the line, but I just think he's a very exciting horse. And someone who's going to tell you a little bit more about him is our good friend Jake Price.
Yeah, well, I think we've got another quality stay on our hands here, Josh, as there's plenty of evidence already that suggests he's going to want a trip in time. Firstly, in his point-to-point, he was off the bridle from about the third last, and he had to really dig in deep to win. And he did all his best work in the finish, and finished off his race stronger than any of them to come home and win and shade Cosley in the end. And a similar story can be said in that bumper that we've just watched on his debut, where he really ground out victory in a style of a stayer rather than as a horse that possesses loads of speed. So I think he's going to want 3 miles in time and be a potential Albert Bartlett horse if good enough. And there's plenty of races that he can pick up along the way. He could go down the Hidden Valley Lake route as well, where he starts off over 2.5 in a maiden hurdle in November, and then steps up to 3 miles, perhaps at Cork in December. And soft ground shouldn't really cause him any issues either. So I think he's an exciting horse for the season ahead.
What a debut. Slade Steel turns up on debut, beats experienced rivals in Blizzard of Oz and Captain Cody. I think this horse is pretty good. I think he was ridden wide at Punchestown, obviously beaten by a very good horse who I think the world of in Ballyburn. I think Slade Steel could mix it at the top. You think of the last few years, Rob Core, Henry de Bromhead have teamed up with some exciting novice hurdlers, none more so than Bob Ollinger at the time. I'm not sure he's that outstanding, but I do think he can mix it at Grade 1 level.
Yeah, I can see the point behind it. It was very impressive on debut, and it was a good run in a good race. I suspect that will work out to be an excellent race at the Punchestown Festival. It was very interesting that Slade Steel actually made his debut. I think it was a random Thursday in the middle of November at Punchestown. It was a pretty low-key meeting. I'd say there was around 150 people there. Can you name one person that was in attendance?
Was that SBW?
No, it was ABW. By himself. I had the mobile out, drove down to Punchestown to see a horse in a maiden hurdle called Xander Clegane. And that brings us on to our fifth horse to follow from myself. My fifth horse to follow for this series comes from Paul Nolan's yard, and there's an awful lot of familiar faces, an awful lot of familiar horses on this Let's Talk Racing horse to follow video. Paul Nolan, you'll be thinking Xander Clegane, Joya Mashan, who's running at the time of this video going up at Galway in a beginner's chase. Hopefully he runs well. They've an awful lot of decent young horses. They were very active in the Aintree sale at the back end of last year and the Doncaster point-to-point sale as well. So fingers crossed, a few nice bumper horses to go to war with. But this is a novice hurdler, and he ran in a couple of bumpers last season as a horse called He's My Hero. He was a 120 grand point-to-point purchase and ran in 2 bumpers. Wasn't a winner in either, but I think he showed enough promise to suggest that he would be winning plenty of races in his time. We'll start off with where he made his racecourse debut, which was at Naas in a pretty nice race. It had Mahon's Way, who'd been bought for crazy money by Cheveley Park to go into training with Henry de Bromhead. It had Mirazur West, who came with a big reputation for JP McManus and Willie Mullins, and he was the horse that went out in front. He's My Hero started off back in 5th or 6th in the race, and Barry O'Neill, almost out of the gate, has afforded Mirazur West 5 or 6 lengths, as you can see, and as a result he's just constantly behind in the race. Mirazur West wasn't setting anything mad out in front, and yet he was constantly getting a freebie. He was constantly being able to fill the lungs. And horses like Mahon's Way and He's My Hero were constantly behind the 8 ball. They didn't really have the opportunity to go on and challenge into the race. When it got to around 3 furlongs out and we turn into the straight, you see He's My Hero makes a big dart to get involved on the outside. He goes 3 or 4 wide. And I've only seen Barry O'Neill do this with only a couple of Paul Nolan bumper horses. He only does it when he thinks he's on a decent horse, where he's able to make that sort of move, and he gets to the girts of Mirazur West. Now he ends up probably doing his running a little bit early in the straight, and as a result Mirazur West was able to kick on again, and He's My Hero was only able to finish second. But he did get the better of Mahon's Way, which I think was a decent scalp to get in his own right. And Mirazur West could be one of the really under-the-radar horses for Willie Mullins this season in novice hurdles. He could easily be a Grade 1 novice hurdler. He's My Hero, on the other hand, stayed on well to the line, and given his point-to-point experience, you'd suggest wants a bit of a step up in trip. He then ran at the Punchestown Festival in a very competitive race, 2 Mile 2 race, some really nice horses that had been involved in all the good form lines throughout the entirety of the season. The likes of Irish Panther, the likes of Dr. Eggman, the likes of Lecky Watson, and he was cut right into that race. They made a bit more use of him on this occasion. Barry O'Neill bouncing out more prominent than he had seen at Naas. He obviously had learned a little bit of a lesson in terms of maybe not giving the horse too much to do from a speed perspective and maybe bringing more stamina into play. And himself and Quantum Storm, who's also a very nice horse of respective stud, and Gordon Elliott were out in front for the majority of the race. When it turned into the straight, they both quickened up, but unfortunately they were a little bit of a sitting duck, and as so happens with these Punchestown Festival bumpers, it is so hard to make all the running or be up in the van all the way and continue to be there. And there was a deluge of horses coming from behind, including the Charles Burns horse Walkaway Harry, who won the race, Irish Panther, who had been very close by, in fact, a file earlier in the season. Dr. Eggman was 3rd, Quantum Storm finished 4th, Lecky Watson, who was close up in the champion bumper, in 5th, and He's My Hero ended up finishing finishing 6th. Only beaten a couple of lengths in the process. I think he'll be a very nice, tough horse to go to war with in staying novice hurdles this year. When you see the likes of latest exhibitions, Xander Clegane from this stable, they do tend to be better when they go up in trip, the 2.5, 3 mile route. I'm not suggesting that this horse is quite in that bracket, but he still could be one of their really nice young horses to hear about and to watch out for throughout the season. Wouldn't surprise me at all if he was winning plenty of races. I was lucky enough to ask Paul a question or two about this horse, and again, a little bit like Mikey OSullivan, I couldn't let the opportunity go by without asking him about the stable star and fan favourite, Xander Clegane.
How are you, Andrew? Just on He's My Hero, we're very pleased with him. His runs in bumpers have been good. Hopefully the bumper in Punchestown will work out a decent race. I think he'll be far better with a jump in front of him, and he'll go novice hurdling straight away. He won't go for another bumper, and he's a bright future ahead of him. Hopefully he's a very sound horse, and hopefully he'll have a decent novice hurdle campaign. So we'll start him off over hurdles. On Xander Clegane, he's had a lovely break. He's thrived over the summer, looks $1 million, and hopefully he'll go straight over fences, and he has with a bit of luck, he'll have a nice novice chase campaign in staying chases. So we're very pleased at the moment, and hopefully we'll keep them all in one piece. Thank you, Andrew.
Death, Taxes and Paul Nolan. Horses to follow. How good is it to get Paul Nolan, the king on Let's Talk Racing? What a man he is. Thank you so much for sending that one in. But
how good did he look, by the way? No. He was on holiday, and he's taken time out of his holiday. He's looking superb, and he's talking about He's My Hero and Xander Clegane.
He did look great. All I'm going to say is this episode, in this series, I've tried to really, obviously I've stuck to the big yards, but I've looked outside of my comfort zone. Alan King isn't my comfort zone. I love Edward Stone, but he'd be the only real horse of his in recent years, which I do like. And Henry de Bromhead wouldn't really be my cup of tea as well. I think he's a lovely man, don't get me wrong, but I prefer Gordon Elliott, Willie Mullins. That's just my preference. Now, you go to where you know's comfortable. First horse, Barry Connell. Second horse, Paul Nolan.
But there's something that's just awfully homely about comfort.
But do you not think that... I actually reckon if you gave the viewers... Let's say there's a competition where you could win £1,000 and you just had to guess the 2 horses you're going to put up. I guarantee there's someone behind that camera that would have put those 2 up.
No, surely not. My Immortal is certainly not in anyone's mind. I'm Barry Connell. Yeah. He's My Hero, you could probably made a case for, because he's
February.
Because he's the Nathaniel Lacey nag for this year.
Yeah.
But obviously I revert to type. That's what I do. But
you do.
On the same time, I'm growing my wings on LTR Ultra, so I'm really it's baby steps. I've got to go small increments, and then maybe someday I'll go away from these people. Maybe someday I might back a winner, but I wouldn't bet on it.
Well, there we go. There's our next 4 horses to follow. If you want the extra 2, go and subscribe to LTR Ultra. We do hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and get your comments down below. We look forward to episode 3. It'll be coming next Thursday. We won't be ill, I can promise. And we'll see you then.